I do something where I call it my daily cookie. My daily cookie for me is literally a cookie, but for you, it doesn't have to be a cookie. I eat pretty darn well almost all day. I hit my steps almost all day as I strength train. I sleep pretty well. But the thing that allows me my freedom to indulge and enjoy is the same thing that allows me to stay consistent and never feel like I'm in a diet prison or I'm on some intense protocol that's not sustainable. So I got my chocolate chip cookie every day. What's your cookie?
I love, there's a Whitaker's chocolate. It's like chocolate and peanut butter. There's real peanut butter in the chocolate. So I'll take 2 of those squares. I'll have those every day.
See?
After lunch. I love it. Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Better with Dr. Stephanie. 'Tis me, your host, once again, and always Dr. Stephanie Estima. My guest today, Harley Pasternak. You may know him from being one of the elite personal trainers in Hollywood. He has trained the likes of Gal Gadot, Halle Berry, Lady Gaga, Rihanna, Megan Fox, Kim Kardashian, Ariana Grande, all the names, Harley has trained them. What we talk about today and who this episode is for. So if you are someone who is feeling overwhelmed with all of the information online, what to do next, if you're feeling paralyzed, if it's infobesity for you, Harley is your guy. He is excellent in this conversation at simplifying action steps and why they are beneficial. We talk about, we de-influence you in this episode. So we talk about why carbohydrates are essential. There are no bad carbs. We talk about no bad fats, no bad proteins. We even talk about having a cookie every single day, and not just like a healthy gluten-free cookie, but like the delicious double fudge, double chocolate, walnut and pecan cookie of your dreams. Okay. We talk about all of the things that relates to fitness and body composition and nutrition. So we talk about weight loss. We talk about performance in the gym. We talk about how to structure an exercise regimen, whether we are moving towards performance or we are moving towards strength as an outcome, what he considers muscle when the muscle is done. So we talk about reps in reserve. We talk about, you're going to want to listen to this part, the creatine conversation. So he has some very interesting thoughts on creatine. He actually has some very interesting thoughts on how he structures exercise programs as well. And make sure you listen to the after party, which is my little summary at the end of each episode to let you know how I think the conversation went as well. Okay. And a little bit about Harley in case the star factor is not enough for you. He is the author of popular diet and fitness books, including the New York Times bestseller Body Reset Diet and the 5-Factor Diet. He holds a Master of Science degree in exercise physiology and nutritional sciences from the University of Toronto and an honors degree in kinesiology from the University of Western Ontario. He is an adjunct professor at the Dalla Lana School of Public Health at the University of Toronto, my old stomping ground as well. I really enjoyed this conversation, learned a lot, and of course, it's such a delight to speak to someone who's had such a global influence as Harley has. So please enjoy my conversation with Harley Pasternak. All right, Harley Pasternak, welcome to the Better Podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today.
I'm happy to be here.
All right, I actually want to dive right into carbohydrates. The ladies that listen to the show, perimenopausal, menopausal women who have gone through the paleo, carnivore, keto, all the things, talk to us about why we fear carbohydrates. And maybe as we get into the weeds a little bit, we can jump into insulin as well and why insulin has been demonized as well. But why are we scared? Why are we so scared of carbohydrates as women?
We have to make it simple. It has to be one thing, right? What's the one thing that we need to focus on and eliminate just to make managing our weight loss journey simple? When it used to be fats, and then it was salt, then it was cholesterol, and it was sugar, then there was a while where protein was something we would minimize. And so it's always been something, and then we tend to overcompensate with other things to fill the void of that one thing that we've removed. So I think the reason that carbohydrate elimination diets have become really popular in the last 25 years is it's the fastest way to see a scale move. If you cut out carbs today for a week, everyone almost everybody, will lose weight really quickly, rapidly. Now, almost all of it is water. Carbohydrate acts like a sponge for water. Very little of that's going to be fat, especially if you're keeping your calories the same. None of it will be fat. But it's a simple way to say, I'm cutting carbs. Look, I stepped on the scale 48 hours later and I'm 4 pounds lighter. So I think that's really where the demonizing carbohydrates has found a resurgence in popularity. And of course, it's been popular in and out over the years. In the turn of the century, around 1900, if you were a type 1 diabetic or a diabetic, you just would have to cut out carbs or you could theoretically die. Your body couldn't process it. And then later on, people with epilepsy found that by really cutting carbs, they saw some benefits. And then Dr. Atkins was significant in popularizing removal of carbs. He was a cardiovascular surgeon, and there was a lot of really obese people that needed heart surgery, but it wasn't safe to put them under anesthesia, so they had to lose weight quickly. And he created this low-fat, ultra no low-carb diet for rapid weight loss so they could lose weight, have heart surgery, and hopefully be saved. At no point did he say this is healthy or sustainable. And ever since then, we've seen the low-carb lifestyle come and go. It's called keto, it's called Atkins, it's called a bunch of different things.
Yeah, and I think what ends up happening is you lose the water weight very quickly, and then you ascribe the problem. As you were saying, you're like, oh, it was always the carbohydrates. That was the problem. And so you ride out, we'll say, the area under the curve. Like you'll ride out the maximal benefit of the diet until it actually becomes maladaptive. So you're like, okay, I'm losing the water weight and maybe I'm improving my insulin sensitivity transiently. But then when you stay on a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet or whatever diet for too long, I'd love to explore with you maybe what you've seen with clients that you've worked with in terms of hormonal dysregulation, particularly for women.
Well, I think the other part of it is people cut out carbs. And if they do lose weight, obviously a lot of it's coming from water. But if they're losing body fat, it's because they're eating less calories. They're paying more attention to their diet. Right. The other big part of it is a lot of foods that people think are carbohydrates are not. So when you say, look, I've cut out all my pastries and no more muffins and I've cut out donuts and French fries, those aren't carbohydrates. They receive the majority of their calories from fat. So they're very calorically dense and they're hyper-processed, which makes us want to eat a lot more of it. So I think that's something we have to keep in mind is that nobody's getting fat eating berries and carrots and red peppers and even baked potatoes. A baked potato like this is about 100 calories. It's full of potassium. You're full once you've had one of those. So something just to keep in mind.
Well, let's actually talk about that. Let's talk about the carbohydrate insulin model of obesity versus energy balance, because I think I get some pushback on this as well when I talk about calories in versus calories out. I understand that is potentially simplistic, especially when we're not taking into account hormones as a perimenopausal woman and her hormones are changing, which can impact leptin and ghrelin and hunger and satiety. But at the end of the day, weight gain is just it's a subtraction. It's an addition or a subtraction. Like you're either gaining weight because you're consuming excess calories or you're losing weight because you're in a caloric deficit. So talk to us maybe about the differences between the carbohydrate insulin model of obesity versus the energy balance model. Are there truths to both of them? Can we take, some truths from both of them and come to a happy medium? Or is it we really do need to just watch our calories? That's the bottom line for weight loss.
The law of thermodynamics has yet to be refuted. It's fundamentally really everything that we need to know. If you spend more money than you make, you're going to have a deficit in your bank account. If you burn more calories than you ingest, you're going to be in a caloric deficit and you're going to lose weight. And there are many factors associated with calories in versus calories out. And as you mentioned, something the insulin model that you've been hearing people talk about for the last 20 years, Gary Taubes was very proficient at communicating the message of this and helped really drive it. And the idea is that if you eat sugar or carbohydrates, your body releases insulin, this hormone, to help manage and remove glucose from your bloodstream. And when you do that, you remove too much of it, and then you create hunger. And with that hunger, you become hungry and you eat more calories, and then you gain weight. That is the exact thing that I'm saying. It's calories in versus calories out. That's just explaining a part of the calories in versus calories out. We know now with a lot of research that model is heavily flawed and is not the primary driver of why people gain weight or lose weight. We know that definitively. We know that while genetics can play a part in weight loss or weight gain, it's not responsible for someone being 100 pounds heavier than someone else. We know that while hormones play a profound impact on weight loss and weight gain, it's not the reason why someone's 100 pounds more than someone else. And at the end of the day, when if you take two identical twins with the same activity level, and they're both consuming 1,800 calories a day, and one's from chocolate cake, and one's from broccoli and salmon, and they're burning 2,000 calories a day, both groups are going to lose weight. Now, one is more sustainable than the other, one is healthier than the other, one's going to have better blood sugar levels than the other, one's going to have better heart health markers probably than the other, but their calorie intake and their calorie output is the same. They're going to experience very similar weight loss. And I think that's something we have to remember. We make every excuse in the book, my insulin sensitivity or hormones, and all of these are factors, but all they are factors that control our body's appetite. So still calories in. They're factors that sometimes to a tiny, tiny extent control our bodies to understand satiety. So that comes back to appetite and knowing when we're full. And very, very, in some cases, can control our output or caloric expenditure. But at the end of the day, it's how much you eat and how much you burn. And the factors associated with each are the most important things you think about. So with calories in, fat has 2.5 times the calories of carbohydrates. It has 2.5 times the calories of protein. And so having lots of fat, you can gain weight eating lots of fat. That's one thing to think about. Fiber can help manage appetite. Protein and fiber and fat, the holy trinity of satiety, can help manage appetite. Those are really important things. Spices can make us sometimes feel fuller faster. More high water foods and vegetables, fruits and vegetables, and grains can make us feel fuller faster. So volumetrics, your stomach filling up. And on the other side, expenditure, you can spin all day long, but none of that will even come close to being able to add muscle mass to your body. So you take your body weight in kilograms to make it easy. Let's say I'm 220 pounds, I'm 100 kilograms. I burn approximately 100 calories per hour if I don't leave my bed. And by adding more muscle to my body, I'm burning more calories by doing nothing 24 hours a day. If I go and do an hour spin class and they say, oh, you burned 600 calories. Well, first of all, you probably didn't. But let's say you did, you're really only burning 600 calories minus the calories you would have burned if you did nothing. And what's the cost of those calories and the inflammation markers and your hunger that comes from that?
And the hunger, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of factors to be thought of. But at the end of the day, people talking about their insulin sensitivity, all that's relevant to many health markers, but it's calories in versus calories out. No one has even come close to refuting that.
And I think that the other thing that is missing from the conversation around weight loss is also performance, right? So carbohydrates, I know myself when I have some protein and carbohydrates prior to a lifting session, it is orders of magnitude better. Like my performance in the gym, I just have more in the tank to push myself than if I were to do it fasted, let's say, or with nothing in the tank. And I think that insulin very much has been demonized. You have lots of influencers on social media talking about like you must always manage, like glucose spikes are absolutely the worst thing on the planet. And it's like, this is a normal, I know you're shaking your head. For those of you that are listening, he has his hand in his head in his hand. And it's like, this is a normal physiological response. Like you would expect when you're lifting heavy weights for your glucose to go, you are going to have a glucose spike because that is a normal, your body is liberating energy for you to do the last squat, lunge, whatever, pull up that you're doing. And so I would love for you to speak to, particularly for women in perimenopause, where we do start to see aberrations in thyroid function, maybe some of the benefits, which is not often talked about. What are some of the benefits of having insulin in the system? Like it's not always like, oh, insulin equals diabetes or insulin equals bad. There's some nuance to it, right? Talk to us a little bit about what insulin does in the body with respect to thyroid.
Yeah, I think, look, I'll leave it up to an endocrinologist to talk about the details of thyroid and all the other hormones that affect us as age changes. I can tell you that The idea that people on social media today follow pages of people that just see how eating one ingredient affects their blood sugar by using a continuous glucose monitor is insanity to me. They eat a food and they're like, look, it made my blood sugar go up. Yes, that's what's supposed to happen.
It's like that's what you would
That's a
expect
good
if you're
thing.
alive.
If it doesn't go up and you've eaten something with carbohydrates or protein, that's scary. You're dead. So you eat something, your blood sugar spikes. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Your blood sugar is supposed to spike. That's a natural reaction in your body. The issue is, does it come back down?
Right.
And if so, how long does it take to come back down?
Right.
Spikes are not the worst thing in the world. Spikes are a part of consuming food. And you focus on what's your average blood sugar level over a period of 90 days. And that's, of course, what we call the A1C. And that's more important. So if I'm looking at someone's sleep, I won't take a look at their, how are they sleeping from 3:01 a.m. to 3:04 a.m.? And I look and I can see that they're kind of tossing and turning. I'm like, this person didn't sleep last night. Yeah. Well, between 3:01 and 3:04, they didn't. But prior to that, they had a lot of deep sleep. And after that, they had a lot of rapid eye movement sleep. So you're taking a superfluous cross-section that gives you useless data, I think, and really overcomplicates us. And there's so many people that I've done consults with over the year who will come in with, they used to have these pens, these things you breathe in. I forget what they're called, to see it if they're in keto state. And then they'd have a continuous glucose monitor stuck to the back of their tricep. And they would have a Whoop on because they want to understand their stress levels at all time. And there's just too many biometrics. And I would turn to them and say, hey, did you have breakfast today? They're like, no, I didn't have time. Oh, okay. Did you strength train yesterday? Not really, but I walked. So they're omitting the fundamentals, the foundation of being healthy and managing your weight. And they're just so dazzled by technology, even if that's not technology that's necessarily for them and is going to help them reach their goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're speaking to is auto-regulation, right? It's like you can delegate all of your data to a ring or a bracelet or a watch or whatever, but at the end of the day, you also have to be able to check in with yourself. Because I wear a wearable ring, and often it'll be like, "Wow, your readiness is terrible." I'm like, "But I feel great,
right.
So I don't care what you say. I'm still gonna go."
Right? How does it know your readiness? Right, exactly.
Well, who knows? Like some algorithm on my heart rate, HRV, whatever it does.
I'm aging myself, but I helped launch this tech into the world with the early days of Fitbit. I was with Fitbit until we sold to Google. And so I know a lot about this. And I would always say, let's not overcomplicate things. People just need to know how much they moved that day, how much they slept, how well they slept. And let's keep it really simple, and let's leave it up to everyone else to overwhelm them with tons of data. But I think that's what's happening right now is that, I had a sleep the other night. I had a great sleep. I actually felt great. I woke up, felt great until I looked at my sleep score. And my sleep score was lower than I was hoping. And then I go, oh, maybe I'm not well rested. Maybe I'm tired. Okay, I'm going to be tired today. And that's something we have to be aware of.
Yeah, love that. You mentioned muscle mass, and I want to bring this back to carbohydrates because I think this is also really important for women to understand. Talk to us about the relationship between carbohydrate consumption and muscle mass accumulation, hypertrophy, even strength as well. Tell us about how carbohydrates contribute to healthy muscle mass.
And for the listeners out there, without assuming your knowledge level with macronutrients, 3 food groups: fat, protein, and carbohydrates. Fat, important for so many things in our body, but hormone production and satiety. And if you eat too much fat, we know that your body can store fat. Very calorically dense, 9 calories per gram, and more so used when you're doing very low intensity, long-term physical activity. So a marathoner would be burning a bunch of fat. And carbohydrates, our preferred energy source of our body. If you think of Pac-Man, those little pellets of energy in Pac-Man are little glucose pellets. And they come in different forms. It could be fruits and vegetables, whole grains, potatoes, and there are great carbs and there are okay carbs, but there's no such thing as a bad carb. And it's important for energy production and crosses the blood-brain barrier as our only energy source to our brain. And then we have proteins. We are protein. We are made up of the building blocks of life. Unlike carbohydrates and unlike fat, you cannot store protein in a in an easily accessible form. So you kind of have to have hits of protein throughout the day. Carbohydrates are really important for everything from gut health to hormone production to brain function, energy in general. If someone is hypoglycemic, if they have really low blood sugar, you might feel dizzy or lightheaded, you could faint. And so imagine smaller versions of that over chronic periods of time. It's not great for you. The heart health and anti-carcinogenic properties associated with many carbohydrates, from water-soluble fiber and insoluble fiber and prebiotic fiber and probiotic fiber, all of these are carbohydrates. You're not going to get these in fats and you're not going to get them in protein. So carbohydrates are just so important, and it makes us happy. There's a dopamine association with carbohydrates as well. And it's important to know that there's no such thing as a bad ingredient. There's just a bad diet.
Yeah. Or just overconsumption, right? It's like, it's not the carbs that were killing you. It's just you were having maybe too many of them. Coming back to that sort of calories in, calories out model of thinking.
And the state in which you're having them, right? So a potato is great. When you slice a potato and deep fry it and salt it, it's hyper palatable and you're going to overeat it.
Right. And when we talk about protein, I mean, I think everybody sort of hopefully everyone's gotten the message. You're listening to the show, you've gotten the message around protein. Usually the recommendation is somewhere, generally like 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Is there a general recommendation that you have or that you like to see with your clients with carbohydrates, or does it really depend on age, fitness level, muscle mass? Is there a general recommendation that you like, or is it just generally the way that you're building the plate is how you like to look at it?
Yeah, I look at it two ways. One is I build the plate, and you alluded to my acronym PATH. And then the other is as a percentage of your total caloric intake. So if you're someone who's actually counting calories and measuring your food, that's not for everybody. But if you're doing that, I like to say that approximately 55 to 60% of your calories should be from carbohydrates. If you take a look at the healthiest populations in the world, all of them are consuming about 60% or more of their calories from carbohydrate. The Japanese, the Chinese, the Scandinavian, Mediterranean diets, all of these are carb-dependent diets, but they're generally whole carbohydrates, they're whole grains, they're tubers, they're legumes, they're fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
The other way I explain it is path, follow the path. And so number one is a palmful of carbohydrates. So whatever fits in your palm of whole grains or high fiber fruits or tubers. A is all the vegetables you want, unlimited amounts of vegetables.
So here's the all.
Here's the all, exactly. Yeah. T is a thumb of healthy fat. So from the base of your thumb to the tip of your thumb, avocados, nuts, seeds, olives, or a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of an oil, a healthy oil. And last is the mass of your hand. So your fist or your hand flat of protein, fish, chicken, eggs, egg whites, actually. We'll talk more about that, et cetera, et cetera.
I actually really like that because I have a lot of and even if you have like a history of any type of eating disorder, sometimes like macro counting or calorie counting can be a bit of a trigger for that. So I do like the idea of visually looking and building the plate and saying, okay, I have approximately a thumb's worth of fat. I have all of the veg, I have the palm's worth of carbohydrates. I think that's a really nice visual. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about muscle mass and women as it relates to carbohydrates as well, because I think we've all heard about muscle protein synthesis. This happens when we're having lots of protein, and that drives the MPS process. What I think is often underlooked is the strategic pulsing of insulin as a means to help muscle protein breakdown. So when we're thinking about a perimenopausal or menopausal woman whose, in my opinion, main goal should be at least preserving the muscle mass that she has, and ideally maybe even adding on to it as she's aging, which makes it's a bit more difficult because now she doesn't have she's lost a lot of these anabolic, hormone, the testosterone and estrogen. However, carbohydrates can really help with the muscle preservation because the protein, you can, the 1 gram of protein, let's say per pound of body weight, the 55 to 60% of carbohydrates as you've outlined, or with the PATH method that you just described as well. When you are consuming those carbohydrates, you are going to get this insulin spike, normal, natural, physiological process. We expect that. But the insulin is also going to help with preventing muscle protein breakdown. It's going to be muscle sparing. I would love for you to talk a little bit about that. If that's one of the strategies that maybe you also implement with your clients who are maybe in their mid, 30s, 40s, 50s who are trying to preserve muscle? What is the strategy, or what is the sort of mechanism that we see with carbohydrates, and why you love them so much?
That's a great question. I think if you've got a wallet and you're paying somebody and you owe them $80 and you run out of 20s, you're going to start using 10s and 5s. And that's kind of the simplest way I talk about muscle sparing when you're on a really low carb or no carb diet, is you start to use your own lean muscle tissue as an energy source to survive and to thrive, hopefully. So in the absence of carbs, your body will start to use protein and fat as an energy source. We don't want that. We want to use things that do not take away hard-earned connective tissues and muscle. And one of the greatest indicators of longevity, not just longevity, but quality of life, is our body's ability to maintain lean muscle mass through later years. So I tell my clients, as you get older, you need to be lifting more than you ever have, and more consistently and more intensely. And carbohydrates are essential to have the energy to do that, but also to make sure that you're fueling your muscles, and also to make sure you're not eating the muscles up that you're working hard to try and build. So it's really hard to be anabolic and catabolic at the same time, to build tissue and break tissue down. So if we're trying to build lean muscle tissue, you want to make sure you're also not breaking down too much lean muscle tissue, and having enough carbs in your diet will protect that.
I'm so happy that I'm having this conversation with you. I had a very similar conversation with Abby Smith Ryan. Talk to us about, in the book, your new book, The Carb Reset, you talk about minimizing fat storage is a more effective strategy than trying to burn fat. Talk to us a little bit about that.
One of the first things we learned, actually, I did my undergrad in London at University of Western Ontario. And I remember one of the first things we learned in physiology was that fat burns in a carbohydrate flame. And it was something it took me many years to understand. And I had this visual in my mind of a candle and holding a bunch of animal fat above it, and it drips, and but it really almost is a great representation. When you have carbohydrates present, the fat metabolism is just that much more efficient. And when we cut out carbohydrates, it's sort of what we talked about before. Yeah, we're losing water, we're burning some fat, but we're also burning lean muscle tissue. And burning lean muscle tissue in the long run is going to actually make it harder for us to lose fat and keep it off, because our resting metabolism is slower. You'd never want to lose muscle. I mean, talk to people who unfortunately have been sick and have had lost muscle. It's so hard to build it back, and it is really the metabolic furnace of our body. So from a physiological perspective, fat really does burn in a carbohydrate flame. Carbohydrates are where we get our fiber from. Having higher diets higher in fiber, both soluble and insoluble. The research is abundant, showing the benefits of weight loss and weight management with a higher fiber, therefore a higher carbohydrate diet. And I can go on, but carbs good, protein good, fat good, they're all good. You don't need to eliminate a food group from your diet. The more the carbohydrate is in its natural state, the better. An apple is fantastic. When you slice, as soon as you take an apple and you slice it in half, you've now processed it. It's a processed food. That's not a bad thing. We think of the word process as a bad word. Hyper-process is something we want to minimize. So if you take those apple slices and dry them out, now it's dried apples, it's still good. It's just not as good as the high water whole apple. And then when you squeeze an apple and you just get from it apple juice, it's really so far from its natural state. There's no fiber left in it. A lot of the nutrients are gone, and you're just getting basically some sugar water with some nutrients. So you want to have things in their natural state or their whole state as much as possible.
And what is your daily cookie philosophy? When I read this, I was like, oh, I'm so happy he's saying this, because I too indulge in some chocolate every day without guilt. But I think some people, when I share that, let's say online, people are like, I can't believe this. This is not healthy. So talk to us about your daily cookie philosophy. What is it, and how do you apply it?
If anybody's ever worked 7 days a week before, if anyone's had something happen where they haven't had a day off in a couple weeks, you start to understand the reason, the applied reason, not the historical religious reasons of days off. But if you have some time off, something to look forward to, something that really changes your state of mind and brings you joy, then you're ready to go back to work the next day. And so there's something mentally about that with having my indulgence. I used to, when I first started off many years ago, I was a bodybuilder, and bodybuilders used to have these cheat meals or cheat days. Mm-hmm. We would use the word cheat. There was guilt associated with it. There was glutton associated with it. You would wake up Sunday morning and you would just go ham on breakfast and you would eat pancakes and waffles and you'd feel sick, but you got to push through. For lunch, you're going to get that chicken Parmesan sandwich, somehow get in your body. And then you're really, you can't stand upright. You're so nauseous, the room is spinning, but you got to find it in you to go for dinner because it's pizza, it's burgers, it's something. And it's so bad for you. It's bad for you physically. It's bad for you mentally. It's in and of itself, it's sort of an eating disorder. So instead, I came up with the term of a free meal. And my clients have free meals, usually a couple per week on 2 different days, where it's an entire meal. For me, I do something where I call it my daily cookie. My daily cookie for me is literally a cookie, but for you, it doesn't have to be a cookie. For you, it can be whatever your thing is. So for one of my clients, they love chocolate. They have 2 squares of dark chocolate after dinner every night. That's their thing. For one of my clients, they like to have 1 pump of vanilla syrup in their morning coffee. That's their one thing. But everything else they do is pretty perfect. I eat pretty darn well almost all day. I hit my steps almost all day. I strength train. I sleep pretty well. But the thing that allows me my freedom to indulge and enjoy is the same thing that allows me to stay consistent and never feel like I'm in a diet prison or I'm on some intense protocol that's not sustainable. So I got my chocolate chip cookie every day. Doc, what's yours? What's your cookie?
I love, there's a no affiliation with them, but there's a Whitaker's chocolate. It's like chocolate and peanut butter. There's real peanut butter in the chocolate. So I'll take 2 of those squares. I'll have those every day.
See?
After lunch. I love it.
And that comes back to, there's no such thing as a bad food, just a bad diet. Yeah. So if I'm trying to take in, let's say 2,400 calories a day, I'm just making up a number. And I'm getting 2,300 from vegetables and fruits and lean proteins and fish. And I'm getting 100 from a cookie. Yeah. Who cares? I'm still good.
And I think that there's a fear around, okay, if I just have 1 bite, then if I have 1 piece of cake, I'm going to have the entire thing. Is moderation, do you feel like moderation is a muscle that we can also train as well? Like the 1 cookie or the 1 square of peanut butter chocolate or the whatever it is?
That's a great question. I think moderation is important, but human nature we're still kind of programmed much in the same way we were thousands and thousands of years ago when we had food shortages. By the way, we had food shortages up until pretty recently. And if you were a hunter-gatherer and you spent 3 days hunting an animal down and you finally caught it and you hadn't eaten really in 3 or 4 days, and you would gorge. You would eat everything you possibly could because you didn't know when the next time was you were going to get a meal. We share a lot of the same DNA with that, and that's still somewhere in us. So if someone throws a cake in front of us, it's kind of hard just to have a spoonful of it and say, great, thanks. Some of us can, depending how good or how bad that cake is. But I think there's something about being strategic. When it comes to my cookie, I don't keep a box of cookies in my house. I buy a cookie. I go out and buy a cookie. And I have a cookie. I think if I buy 3 cookies, I might eat 3 cookies. I think that's part of it. The other part of it is if you haven't eaten enough throughout the day or enough of the right things, right? If you're cutting carbs and your blood sugar is low, you're more likely to gorge on those, whatever you can find. So making sure you're set up for success, you're not starving, and moderation is key.
I think too, it's really smart that you go and buy 1 cookie. So you're putting a couple of barriers in between the overindulgence, right? It's like, okay, I got to get up, I got to go to the store, I got to buy the 1 cookie, I got to come home and then eat it. So I think that there's some value there as well. I don't do that, but what I do make sure I do after lunch is I make sure I've had enough protein and carbohydrates. So I'm already kind of full. I just want like a little sweet. I just want something sweet at the end. So I'm already reaching satiety by the time I reach for the chocolate. So those are really, I like the boundary though, like the physical boundary that you put between the cookie, you and the cookie. I think that that's also really smart, especially if you're someone who's listening and you're like, man, I could just never have 1. Okay, well, go to the store and just buy 1 and then you can have the 1. I think that that's brilliant as well.
And get the best cookie you can find. If someone gives me, someone I love very much, a friend of the family said, hey, I found this healthy cookie. I saw it. I bought it for you. It's gluten-free, grain-free, dairy-free, all this stuff. No. No, no. You've taken
I want the
all of
gluten.
the. Nobody's dying because they had gluten in their cookie. Nobody's dying or living, a lesser life because there was a real milk chocolate instead of Carbs in their cookie. I understand. If you have a food allergy, that's separate. But get the thing that brings you the most joy. If it's chocolate, and you're having 95% dark chocolate, there's no way that's your favorite chocolate. In the back of your head, you think you're being healthy by get the chocolate that brings you the most joy, have a small amount of it, move on to the next day and keep going.
I love that. Yes, it's like, no, I want the bad thing. I want,
Right,
the quote
exactly.
unquote the bad
Yep.
thing. Yeah. I like your comment around joy because I think that there is a really big conversation. Certainly, there's a big conversation around nutrition and fitness, but the other big lever, if you will, or big vertical is stress management. And I think it's a bit, what's the word? Untangible. It's like, okay,
Right.
I know I need to manage my stress, but okay, fine. So I think joy promoting activities is a way to reduce stress. Can you talk to us a little bit about maybe some practices that you employ with your clients around stress mitigation, stress reduction? Maybe it's through food, like finding the joy in the super, indulgent cookie, chocolate, piece of cake, whatever it is. What are some ways that we can reduce our stress through nutrition, fitness, and then lifestyle habits?
There was a great book I read many years ago. It's one of my favorite all-time books. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. Have you heard of the book? Dr.
Yes,
Viktor
Viktor
Frankl.
Frankl.
And
Yeah.
so, the early Viennese thinkers who gave us what we now call psychology, you have Freud, who said everything was about sex or your relationship with your parents, and then Jung, everything was about dreams and dream interpretations, and then Adler, and then Frankl. And Frankl, he had this quote that stuck with me. He said, "You cannot pursue success because success, just like happiness or wealth or weight loss, can only happen as a natural byproduct of dedicating yourself to a process. The more you aim at the end goal, the more you are likely to miss it." So if someone's trying to be happy, they're doomed. If someone's trying to be lean, they're doomed. Get joy from the process, and you have direct control over the process. You control how many times you move your feet each day. You control, for the most part, what time you go to bed, what time you wake up. You control, for the most part, what you eat and how much you eat. And so finding meaning and purpose in the things you can control can give you that internal fulfillment. You're not dependent on anyone else. You did it. You can feel good about accomplishing these small tasks throughout the day. And as a byproduct, you feel much, much better in the process. And I think in the era we live in of digital exposure and social media and news stories being beamed to us in echo chambers, more than ever, I think we have to really focus on the things we can feel, we can touch, we can count with our own fingers and hands in front of us. And there is a real joy that comes from that.
I think what I hear you saying is really we can begin to divorce ourselves or unhitch ourselves from the outcome and marry ourselves, if you will, to the behaviors every day that we do have control over, because we really don't have control over the outcome. Like maybe
Indirect.
yeah, exactly. So if you really dial in the behaviors that you're doing every single day, then the 10-pound weight loss goal that you are maybe trying to achieve in the next 6 months or whatever, the likelihood of that happening is now much higher if you are marrying yourself to the behaviors, which I think is really important, because in the context of weight loss and body recomping, I think a lot of people are like, okay, I need to lose 5 pounds, or I need to lose 10 pounds, or I need to, I don't know, grow my glutes. I need to shrink my weight, whatever it is. But I think if you're like, okay, well, in order to do that, I need to be consuming more carbs, because fat burns in the carb fire, as you mentioned. I need to be consuming enough protein, getting enough sleep, getting to the gym enough time, enough times per week to stimulate that tissue. If you dedicate to the stuff you can do every single day, then I think that the outcome, it's far more likely to happen, but you're not attached to it anymore. You're just attached to the stuff who you're becoming in the process.
Exactly.
Would that be fair?
I was in the lake a few minutes ago with my son, and he has this little device. It's like a human submarine. It's got a motor. The scuba divers use it. And so it pulls him through the water, and we raced to this raft in the middle of the lake. I swam, and he used this jet-powered thing, and he beat me. And he was celebrating at the end that he beat me. And I said, okay, you got back before I did, but what did you gain in the process? He said, what do you mean? I said, are you stronger? He said, well, no. I said, did you get a better swim technique? No. Are you healthier? Did you, do you look different? He's like, no. I said, well, I did. So you beat me here, but I gained a lot in the process. And so teaching him about the journey versus the destination is something I definitely got from Viktor Frankl. And the great story, when he used to treat people with sleep issues, imagine you're having trouble falling asleep at night. The harder you try and fall asleep, if you close your eyes and go, sleep, 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 the less likely you are to fall asleep. If you start counting sheep, listening to music, reading a book, next thing you know, it's the next day. And so I think approaching your diet, your exercise, weight management in the way that I just described, focusing on the process is so key.
Yeah, I'm very much trying to instill that in my children as well. I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, and it's like the outcome, it's the effort that you put in that always matters more than the outcome. So if they're like, I got this on my test, I'm like, okay. And are you proud of the effort that you put into it? Like, I don't care what the mark is. Like, are you proud of the effort? That's sort of what my through line is. I don't know if I'm succeeding. I'm sure they'll be on a chair in 20 years talking about me as their mom, but in the interim, I'm trying the best that I can. Let's actually shift to exercise. I want to talk about your philosophy around exercise for a moment. Obviously, you're world famous for some of the clients that you have, some of the fittest in the world. Talk to us about your exercise philosophy. Do you ascribe to exercise minimalism? Do you feel like more is more, less is more? Talk to us a little bit about what you think for body composition, and maybe we'll tailor it to women who are in perimenopause.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of efficiency and simplicity. I love Japanese food. I love Scandinavian architecture. And if you think of Japanese food, it looks so simple. I mean, there's hardly ever a sauce. It's just a little piece of fish. It hasn't even been cooked sometimes on a ball of white rice. Yet it's perfect. It's just perfect. And so really optimizing and in some ways minimizing the things you need to do to feel and look your best are everything. Because the simpler something is, the more likely you are to do it and keep doing it. And I think that's the most important thing. Consistency is everything. It really is. You could have an incredible 2-hour boot camp that kicks your butt and then do it again in 2 weeks and you're having no benefit. I'd rather you do 10 minutes a day each day for the next 2 weeks than 2 hours once a week. And so simplicity and consistency. And when I was in grad school at the University of Toronto, I got recruited by the military, and I worked on something called MVT. It was a program called Multiple Variation Training. I looked at the work of Dr. Hans Seeley, who came up with the General Adaptation Syndrome. And for people listening who don't know what the General Adaptation Syndrome is, I like to explain it like this. Imagine you get a phone call, and phone's like, you answer the phone and someone says, your house is on fire. You start freaking out, sweating, heart racing, hyperventilating. What do you mean? What do you mean? What happened? And then all of a sudden, 30 seconds later, I start laughing on the phone and say, just kidding. You would be so mad. Your heart would still be elevated. You hang up. Next day, I call you again. No, today your house is really on fire. Wait, are you serious? Is it not? It's elevated not as much as day one. You're thinking it could still happen. Maybe it's not. And I laugh and I say, it's not. You're like, Harley is just a jerk. Day 3, you see it's me calling, you don't even answer it. You have become adapted to me. I'm the stimulus. You're the organism. So with exercise, the goal is you want to make the stimulus, the exercise, intense enough that it causes your body, your muscles, to be alert, to be awoken, to be disrupted. And with time, if you keep giving it that same stimulus, your body's going to adapt to it. And it's not going to really do anything to it anymore. So you need to keep changing it. For your body to keep changing, the program has to keep changing. And I came up with a program that was based on changing all the variables of exercise. So instead of working out longer, you just change the exercises and you change the workouts to keep brief, intense workouts. You change the number of sets, reps, resistance, dumbbells or barbells or body weight or cables, angles, incline, flat, decline. Are you standing? Are you kneeling? Are you lying? All of these little variables that I call the macro variables. And then you have the micro ones. So what time of the day are you working out? It's a different crowd in there, different music, different scene. What music are you listening to? Who are you working out with? What gym are you going to? All these little things make a difference. So keep changing your variables, and then you don't need to keep adding time to your workouts. And that's really, really important.
And just as a point of clarification, when you say keep changing the workouts, are you talking about you have like a set time where there's maybe an allowance for progressive overload? Maybe they're able to increase their strength or the weight, and then you switch it up maybe after a few weeks? Or are you talking about daily, like each time you're going in to train a certain body part, or if it's upper body, lower body, full body, however you're doing your splits? Is it every time that it's different? Is that what you're suggesting?
I would say that when I create a program for somebody, we split their body parts up into different days of the week. And I would say that every time they come in to train those specific body parts or that body part, it's completely different than what we had done the week before and the week before that and the week before that. So let's say on Monday, someone does, I'll just throw it out, quads and rhomboids and obliques. And for quads, we do a reverse lunge, and for rhomboids, we do a TRX row, and for obliques, we do a side bend off a back extension bench, and we cycle through all of those. The next time they come in, I might give them a completely different rhomboid movement. Maybe it's a reverse cable fly. For quads, maybe it's a lateral lunge or a step up. And for obliques, maybe it's a side bend off a bench or a side plank off a bench. So that's one thing, is by changing the exercises. The other is I can keep the same exercises, but just change the sets, reps, and resistance or cadence. So if someone comes in and this week we're doing squats, for example, and we do 10 sets of 10 repetitions, and then next week instead of that, we're doing 4 sets of 50 repetitions, but same exercise. 4 sets of 50 is very different than 10 sets of 10. Same exercise, same body part, same gym, same trainer, same music, but all we're changing is the sets and rep range, which therefore means the weight range. So by keeping changing these things up, your body needs to for your body to keep changing, the stimulus has to keep changing.
And what are your thoughts on approaching muscle failure? Do you think that it's necessary? Do you think we need to go all the way to muscle failure as a way to drive muscle growth?
I think that going to failure is not essential. I think there's some safety concerns associated with going to failure if you're not an elite athlete with someone spotting you and you're very well warmed up, and your injury history is very well understood. I think I tell people 2 RIR for most things, reps in reserve, which means if I say do 10 reps of something or 15 reps and you get to 15, maybe you got 2 more in you. But if you don't get to 15, you've gone too heavy. And if you get to 15 and 15, you barely get it, you probably could go a little bit lighter. And if you get to 15 and say, I could have done 20, you went too light. So I think having 2 reps in reserve when you're above 10 reps or up, and then below that, I would say 1 rep in reserve. If sometimes I train pretty heavy with low reps. If I'm trying to do 5 reps and I could have done 7, I have the wrong weight.
Right. What do you think about, so I think that the message is, for women at least now, we're sort of moving from being cardio bunnies to muscle mommies, right? So we're moving into the weight section of the gym.
I like that.
Some of the pushback, I like to talk a lot about muscle hypertrophy, muscle strength as outcomes for women. Sometimes I'll have women say, but I'm so inflamed after training, right? Especially if you're lifting heavy. Like I did legs this morning. I know already. I was lifting very heavy. 5 to 7 was my rep range. So I was trying to get PRs, personal records for myself. So I know that tomorrow if I were to weigh myself today versus tomorrow, I'm probably going to be heavier tomorrow. What is your thought process around inflammation post-training, or for maybe women who are very sensitive to it? I mean, I hear the same thing with creatine. It's like, oh, but I feel bloated with creatine. So talk to us maybe about what your thinking is around this. Do you counsel? Have you ever heard that? Do you counsel women around this? What is your thoughts here?
Remind me to come back after and talk about creatine. The swelling that you experience, the inflammation after resistance exercise, is a very important and good thing. Just as if you eat carbohydrates and you see a surge in your blood sugar after, that is what your body is supposed to do. When you strength train your muscles, if you're strength training appropriately, your muscles operate on the sliding filament theory. If your muscles lengthen and shorten, this is how they contract, and right? Mm-hmm. And so if you tear your muscles, if you strength train appropriately, you're going to tear your muscles just a little bit. That's a good thing. Those tears, when they heal, they become tighter, stronger, denser than before. We like that. That's how your body gets stronger. In order for them to heal, our body sends blood flow to that area with oxygen and nutrients and protein and all the things to help this area heal. That is the inflammation that most people are experiencing after a workout. During a workout, you have what's called the pump. If any of you want a very profane version of an explanation of the pump, watch Pumping Iron with Arnold Schwarzenegger, the documentary from 1980.
It is very profane.
Yeah, but very funny for adults only.
Yes. Yeah.
And then what happens afterward is the functional swelling. The functional swelling. That's why you're not supposed to take an ice plunge after you strength train, because you need that swelling. You don't want that swelling to go away. That's important swelling. There's another kind of swelling that's a dysfunctional or a pathological swelling of people that overtrain. And in the early days of CrossFit, I remember I received some legal letters from them because people were training way too hard and they were getting a condition called acute exertional rhabdomyolysis, where their body muscles would start to break down so badly that they would actually become systemic and do damage in their kidneys, and they would be urinating blood. And in fact, in some of the chat rooms and some of the CrossFit people, they would call it, oh, Uncle Rhabdo came to town. You know, when you start peeing blood, it was a sign of like a badge of honor that you trained so hard, you're peeing blood. If anyone's listening and you're peeing blood, go directly to the hospital. This is not a good thing. You don't want to do that. So that's dysfunctional swelling from a overtraining perspective. There's another pathological or dysfunctional swelling that would be an injury. If you tore something, it's a macro tear, some connective tissue you shouldn't have, and you experienced a lot of swelling, that's another bad version of swelling. The swelling that you experience in days after, I think everyone is different. Everyone's kidneys are different. Men and women are different hormonally. There's a hormone called aldosterone that has a profound impact on our body's ability to shed water, retain water, amongst other things, our sodium levels. So drinking water is really, really helpful. I think people overdo some of these electrolyte beverages these days. You don't need to have 4 electrolyte packets a day to stay hydrated. You can actually have health issues as a result of that. So,
Yes.
So yeah, good swelling, bad swelling. Swelling, don't be scared of it if it's in the first couple examples I gave. And creatine.
Yeah.
Again, I've been doing this so long. This is my 34th year in practice. I was hired in my younger years when I was in grad school by a company called EAS, Experimental and Applied Sciences. A really incredible guy named Bill Phillips started the company. Bill Phillips is the reason why you know what creatine is. He is the first person that brought creatine to the commercial market. He, I believe, I don't want to speak out of turn, but had a business selling certain things to help people's muscles get bigger at a time when it wasn't illegal to do so in the United States. And when the government reclassified these things, he pivoted and he helped start Metrex, the knee replacement powders, with Dr. Scott Connolly. And then he was the first to launch creatine, and creatine he was launching because of its side effect. Its side effects are water retention in the muscle. So as a bodybuilder, in the muscle, intramuscular water retention.
Yes.
So you actually do retain water on creatine. That is the main reason that people took creatine when creatine came to the market, was water retention. That's why people took it, because their muscles appeared more swollen while they were on it. The second you stopped taking your creatine, you'd pee a bunch and it was gone. Your muscles aren't more muscular. You don't have more muscle tissue. They're just temporarily swollen. And that's, and it was actually a useful tool when I would train people on films. If someone had to be a scary big bodybuilder or a hitman, I used to give them creatine to make them look more swollen on screen. That was the only reason. Now, there's a lot of research since then. I'm not saying any of the research is wrong. I'm very familiar intimately with a lot of the research from my days in the military. Dr. Paul Greenhalgh in the UK was sort of the pioneer in looking at creatine and performance. It showed marginal benefit. I mean, marginal. It showed benefit, marginal. And then creatine went away. Like creatine was dead. Creatine sales plummeted. For 20 years, nobody cared about creatine. No one talked about it until TikTok became big. And until podcasts where people need to talk about a new supplement all the time. And all of a sudden, it makes you younger, it makes your brain sharper, it's good for heart health, it's good for this, it's good for that. And it might be. But as I've learned in this business for a long time, if there is a supplement that comes out of nowhere, and it really came out of nowhere. No one talked about it for 20 years. And all of a sudden, it's the cure-all for everything. Run. Literally run. Who's driving this? Who has finance associations with a lot of these? A lot of the people I know who are standing on mountains and screaming about it also happen to own creatine companies or supplement companies, or they need content to talk about. So I don't think creatine's dangerous. I think creatine's very safe, very safe. I don't think it's an essential nutrient. If you are eating perfectly, if you are strength training as well as you should, if you are sleeping as well as you should, if you are laughing every day, if you're working on community and socialization, if you're doing all the things that you have direct control over as well as you possibly can, and then you want to take creatine, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen anyone say that creatine is like the cure-all in the absence of strength training. Like I don't think, or maybe they are, and I've just missed it completely. And I will walk this back if I'm wrong. I've had at least my impression is like creatine is there as a supplement, such as the name suggests, to supplement your dialed in lifestyle where you are strength training adequately, you're consuming protein that you're consuming foods that have naturally occurring creatine in them. Like, if you're eating meats, you're getting the creatine from your red meat or your lean meat products. And maybe you've seen something different because you've been a bit closer to it. But anybody that is claiming that creatine in and of itself is a miracle supplement, I mean, any supplement, it's like any supplement is just that. It's supplementing.
It exists.
Yeah.
But again, there's so few supplements that I ever use. There's supplements of du jour, and again, I saw creatine come and go. I see it now hotter than ever. It's also going to be gone soon. I've seen these cycles long enough. I remember when HMB was everything. Vanadyl sulfate was everything. I remember when echinacea, if you could beat the common cold if you had echinacea. Right. Chromium picolinate. I've seen all of these come and go. Yeah. And there's very few people that I know that are doing everything right before they need to resort or warrant taking a supplement. It's a safe one. I will reiterate that. There is no drawbacks or negatives if you're okay with a bit of swelling to creatine.
Yeah. What do you think that are we missing? What do you think that people are not focusing on? And I'll say people, I'll dial that into women. What do you think that women are not focusing enough on when it comes to their exercise regimen?
What do I think people are not focusing on when it comes to their exercise regimen?
Or focusing on enough, yeah.
I think they focus too much on the muscles they see when they look in the mirror and not enough on the muscles that they can't see in the mirror. So your posterior chain, your upper back, your triceps, your glutes, your hamstrings, your adductors, things that aren't evident on the frontal plane of the body. When you look at the forward part of it, I think that's important. Not enough men, especially, train adductors and abductors and glutes. You're seeing more of it now, but men never did. I remember the inner thigh machine we would call the lady machine. I mean, it was. Right. Like, why would a guy ever need an inner thigh? I like to call that one the
good girl machine. That's the good girl machine, and the abductors are the bad girl
I like that. I'm going to take that. Actually, no, I don't think I can use
it's
those.
Yours.
So,
okay,
so I think that's changed a lot. I think training isolaterally is really important.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for many years, not just with my clients, but with myself. I don't think I've had a client do a squat in 20 years. Which is not to say squats are bad and you shouldn't do squats. But I think having worked with a lot of people over a long time, I've yet to see someone whose left side and right side are even remotely balanced, whether it be a leg length discrepancy, scoliosis, an injury history, lack of mobility in an ankle, just neurological dominance on one side over another. Yeah. So we do almost everything isolaterally. Even when I do a stiff leg deadlift, I do a single dumbbell stiff leg deadlift. Oh, wow. So not only am I training one leg at a time, but having one dumbbell in my hand, the whole opposite side of my core is freaking out, holding me vertically as all the weight's on this right side. So it's got my left obliques and my transverse and everything's just really firing hard, which protects your back more so than training with a dumbbell on both sides. You would think the opposite holds true. Yeah. So I think training one side at a time, training one dumbbell at a time, I think are really important things, and training your posterior chain more.
I couldn't agree with you more on the posterior chain and the squat, because it is very difficult to do a squat. It is such a technically difficult. Everyone's like, "Oh, I know what a squat is." And I mean, you've been to the gym, I've been to, it's very rare to see it done well. And like you said, there's going to be an ankle mobility on the right side. There's going to be a joint issue on the left. You're going to have abduction.
Exactly.
Firing on one side, different. It's so difficult to do a squat well. And for women, posterior chain, I love that you've said that, because we tend to be quad dominant. We tend to be able to, I can just do whatever and my quads grow. I have to work on my hamstring. They are much weaker than my quadriceps are. So I love that you said that, and back as well. Like, ladies, if you're, we often talk about like hourglass, building sort of an hourglass figure, which of course includes glutes and posterior chain, but the top of the hourglass is the back, right? If you want to like look like you have a smaller waist, you have to have that beautiful flare on the top as well.
Exactly.
Love that. Love that. I wanted to ask you, I made a note here, so I'll just make sure that I don't forget it. When, you said you've seen things come and go, creatine and all the things. I was around when like ephedra, you could buy ephedra fat burners on the shelves. What is do you have a supplement protocol, a supplement stack that you like to recommend or that you take yourself? Or is it just you're really trying to dial in on whole foods first, and then if you feel like you have, maybe you're taking protein powder or something. Is there supplements that you like to take, or not at all?
I am a big fan of a fiber supplement. And as I get older, it becomes more and more important. We tend to overlook the meat and potatoes supplements because we want the latest and greatest and the most interesting and the ones that have the most marketing behind them. You don't see a lot of people reposting Metamucil on TikTok and Instagram these days, but I can't think of another supplement that has the body of evidence behind it for gut health, blood sugar maintenance, weight management, satiety, heart health, than having a really good water-soluble fiber like a psyllium fiber. Amazing. I mean, just amazing.
And it's they have orange flavor too, which is really good.
They have orange flavor. It reminds me of Tang from when I was a kid, or Capri Sun. And I mean, how many women do you know that are completely regular when it comes to motility? Less than...
it gets worse in midlife too.
Yeah,
as your estrogen declines, your gut health just takes a beating as well.
And the same applies for men. And it's something that women are okay talking about with each other, but men don't.
Right.
The things that men feel uncomfortable talking about, that women do feel comfortable talking about. So I think as a man, but as a woman especially, childbirth years, after giving birth, there tends to be hemorrhoids tends to be a very common thing. So I think for me, a high water soluble fiber supplement is just, I can't thank you. It's fantastic. Protein powder or a protein supplement, for me, that's just a convenience thing. Nobody needs protein supplements. They're just for convenience. Sometimes I like to have a smoothie. I don't want to put a raw chicken breast with my berries. So I think having a good whey is a good way to go. There's actually something I'm a big fan of called the Genius Shot. It's great. I just love the convenience because you can bring it on an airplane. It's the legal amount to bring on an airplane.
And it's also the protein to calorie ratio is insane. I don't know it offhand, but I remember when I first saw it, the protein to calorie ratio is excellent.
100% of the calories are from protein.
Oh, it's 100. Okay, so even better. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So I like that. So that's chalked up to a protein supplement. I think in this era of semi-glutides, I think people, I was never a staunch advocate of a multivitamin, but I think with the amount of people using semi-glutides today, I think a multivitamin can be very helpful because you tend to be missing a lot. You're eating a lot less and you're missing a lot of nutrient-dense food. So I think a high-quality multivitamin is a good way to go. I think some people struggle eating those massive pills. They're just hard to swallow. So you can buy smaller ones or liquid form or gummies. And there was some interesting data I showed that some of these are 20% less bioavailable in the gummy form or 23% less bioavailable. So then I have two. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Just getting some more micronutrients into is pretty good. Those are the ones that right now I'm liking. There's some other ones out there, depending on what's happening in my life. There's someone I know who had chronic low B12 levels and took B12 supplements. First tried it in diet, didn't help. Then B12 supplements didn't help. And so I sent them for a test for pernicious anemia. And so it came back that they have an autoimmune thing where their gut basically attacked its own cells and it's not good at absorbing B12 through your diet. And so they have to have a shot, once a month or so, and they're good. So I think sometimes we think supplements are going to save us if we see a blood test, but that's not always the case. And some of these supplement companies out there that are selling you blood tests that come back and say, oh, you need all these things, it's not necessarily the case. So just buyer beware.
I love that. This has been such practical advice. How many books have you written at this point?
A lot that I wrote for myself that under my name, 8, I think.
Yeah.
The last book I wrote was the revised edition of Body Reset Diet, which did very well around the world. That was we're using your blender to sort of jumpstart your life, which I'm still a big fan of. I make all my soups in a blender. Oh, this is actually very funny. I don't know how many posts I've had on Instagram over the last 15 years or so, but I made a post about one of my green soups that I think has been viewed by 7 million people or so.
Oh, wow.
Which is more than any post I've ever done added together. So people like blenders.
Well, it's convenient. I love smoothies too. And especially if you're dealing with digestive issues, like if you're sort of pre-digesting it through, you're macerating whatever, you're blending up whatever whatever you're putting in there, you're just helping the digestive system along a little bit. So I love a smoothie as well. And soups are genius too in a blender as well. That's awesome as well.
Amazing.
All right. So where can we find your new book and where can we find more about you? Let's plug all the places.
You can go to harleypasternak.com and there's links for Amazon and in Canada, Indigo, and the US, Barnes & Noble, but Amazon's always a good place to go. Instagram, Harley Pasternak. That's where I tend to post the most. There's less crazy people there than on some of the other platforms. And I'm an adjunct professor both in the Department of Public Health at University of Toronto and also the School of Kinesiology and Health Sciences at University of Toronto. So
fantastic. My old stomping ground.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. Is that where you went to school?
Yeah, I did neuroscience and psych there. Yeah. Awesome. All right. So we will make sure to put all these links here. The Carb Reset Diet. Thank you for all of your work. Thank you for your time and your focus and energy today. It's been a delight talking to you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Take care.
Hey friends, welcome to the after party where I tell you what I really thought of that conversation. And let me tell you, there was a couple of interesting points in this conversation. So let's start with the things I really liked. I think that the biggest thing I really appreciated about Harley was his ideas have been really distilled down for simplicity because he wants everybody to adopt them, right? I think that it can be very easy to get lost in optimization land where you are tracking every metric and you get obsessed over data and then you sort of lose the plot. I think Harley is really incredible at distilling things down to the smallest unit of action items for you so that you can take action in your life. So I loved that as an overarching theme with him. I loved the conversation around carbohydrates. I have been banging on this drum for a while now. It's not just protein that we need. While protein is incredibly important, we also need carbohydrates, particularly for women, particularly as we age. And I think he did a wonderful job explaining some of the particulars and the nuances of carbohydrates as it pertains to digestion, as it pertains to performance, as it pertains to mood, and certainly as it pertains to the pursuit of muscle mass and the maintenance of mass as we age. So I loved that. And the other thing that I really loved that he said, it was a small moment in the conversation, but it was about joy. So we were talking about his cookie philosophy, and he was like, I go and I have like the best cookie, And so he was quoting Viktor Frankl, who I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like, you cannot pursue success. You can only dedicate yourself to the process. And if you are a hardcore Betty, as I know you are, if you are listening to this, you know that I've talked about this in the context of outcome behaviors with the outcome goal, which is like the goal here is the 20-pound weight loss, but the behavioral goal is like, hey, in order to lose that 20 pounds, I got to get myself to the gym 2 times a week. I got to make sure I'm eating whole foods, et cetera, et cetera. So I really liked this idea of doubling down on joy as a tangible way to mitigate stress, but also as a way to really pursue your goals. He was talking about and I think he was referring more to like diet fatigue, like if you're always on the diet versus just taking a day off and having like a free meal. I think that that's a wonderful way to approach eating, and it allows for a little bit more flexibility in the diet choices as well. Now, some of the things that I was a little surprised by, first is exercise, the way that he was talking about exercise. There's two things about exercise that I think that are fine, and I wouldn't necessarily do these myself. So the first was when he was saying he would change the exercise up every single time a client came into the gym. So I think that the example that he gave was like, hey, if we were doing glutes, or no, it was quads and rhomboids, and I think it was like obliques, I would change the exercise every time. So we would do an exercise for quads, maybe it was like leg extension, and then a rhomboid, maybe it would be, I don't know, like a row, and then obliques would be a side plank, whatever the examples were. I forget the examples he said. And then the next time I would change it. So we're still stimulating the same muscle groups, but the exercise selection would change. So I don't know if I would do that myself, because at least the way that I know that my motor patterning works, I need to actually expose myself to the kinesthetic movement several times in order to learn it well. I think that there's in the same way that we are literate reading words, I think that there is a physical literacy as well, a motor literacy that I like to climb. So I like to be proficient in a movement. And in order for me to be proficient in a movement, in the same way that when I was 4 and I was learning to, maybe, I don't know, when do you learn? Do you learn to read when you're 4? 5, 6, whatever. Like, I want to be proficient in reading the paragraph. So I have to read the paragraph many times. The same is true for my motor learning. Like, I need to be able to do the exercise many times. The other thing that he said, which was around the unilateral training, I think is an important concept. I actually integrate a lot of unilateral training into my workouts, but I only ever really make it 1 or 2 exercises maximum out of the, let's say, 5 or 6 exercises that I'm performing that day. And the reason for that is because unilateral exercises take a hell of a lot of time, right? So for an example, Bulgarian split squats, anytime I know that I have Bulgarians on the menu, that exercise alone is going to take me something like 35 to 40 minutes, because if I'm doing 3 sets, it means I'm actually doing 6, because it's 3 sets on the right side, 3 sets on the left. And so I think if you have a lot of time available to you, I think unilateral training is phenomenal for all the reasons that he stated, that you actually get to learn your discrepancies from left to right. You can actually, if you are weaker, let's say on the right side, in whether it's muscle contraction or size or mobility or joint issues, whatever, you can actually focus in and hone in and correct those. So that's amazing. And I am only ever going to do 2-legged deadlifts. I'm just telling you right now. Like, I love you, Harley. I am definitely coming down to your studio and we'll work out together, but I don't want to do single leg deadlifts because the double leg deadlifts are hard enough for me. So that was one area that I didn't necessarily agree with for myself. That's not to say that the scientific validation and justification behind it was wrong. It's just not something that I would do. And then the other thing I was kind of shocked about was the creatine conversation. And I understand the lens that he was coming from. Like, he's seen everything kind of come and go. And maybe I just haven't been exposed to people saying that creatine in the absence of weight training is a miracle. I mean, we had, if you remember on the show, we had Dr. Darren Kandow. Like, he is the creatine expert guy. And he was even, I think he even said, like, friends don't let friends skip leg day. Like, that was literally what he said on the show. And we'll put a link in the show notes if you want to go back and listen to Darren. I love him. But he was saying creatine really only works if you're training, and that aligns with what Harley's saying, but Harley sort of, I feel, took it a step further and was like, people are saying that, it does all these things for your heart and does all these things for your brain. But I think that my understanding of at least what people are saying online, which could be completely wrong, by the way, is that I don't find people are saying creatine by itself is this miracle thing. So I just found that maybe surprising, and maybe my algorithm is not feeding me the same stuff that it's feeding up Harley. So that could be the reason there as well. Other highlights for me, I loved that he talked about the posterior chain. Women, we need to be training the muscles that we can't see. So the back, the hammies, not just, we can't see glutes, we train glutes, but I think that training our hamstrings, training our back, I think is super, super important. Not just for aesthetics, certainly, having like hamstrings that you want to take a chunk out of and bite it like a chicken leg for sure is a great goal to work towards, but just also functionality and balancing the natural imbalance for a woman having stronger quads than she will. Women typically typically have stronger quads than they do hamstrings. So I think that that was super important and loved that as well. Harley, thank you so much for coming on the show. If you are listening to this, and I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as well. So let us know what you think on Apple, iTunes, leave us a comments on Spotify. We're reading all of it. We're taking all of the information in to make this show better, wah wah, pun intended, for you. So I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.